After the original, after a sequel, after 2 cartoon series, one of which was good, one of which was not very good, after a couple of video games, after 30 years of waiting, Ghostbusters has been remade. And no surprises, it's not very good.
It's a class 4 operation. It's okay, she seems peaceful. My name is Erin Gilbert, Doctor of Particle Physics.
First thing to notice is that the style of comedy here is very, very different. Ghostbusters 1984 is witty, it's dry, it's clever, it's cocaine-fueled wordplay, whereas Ghostbusters 2016 is crude, lowbrow. It feels kind of like the first day at a college improv class. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Some of my favourite comedies are really lowbrow. But the problem is that none of these laughs are ever derived from the characters. Instead, they're just whatever they think will be funny within the scene. Here's a clip from Ghostbusters 1984 that shows how you can write comedy.
You're not going to lose the house. Everybody has 3 mortgages nowadays.
But at 19%, you didn't even bargain with the guy.
Ray, for your information, the interest rate alone for the first 5 years comes to $95,000.
The comedy in this scene derives from the characters themselves and their interactions. You've got sarky Bill Murray, you've got a very earnest Dan Aykroyd, and then you've got sweet but a little bit too logical Harold Ramis. Ghostbusters 2016 is just full of quick gags. It's whatever's going to be funny here and now. It never derives from the characterization. For me, that's one of the big differences between TV comedy and film comedy. When you've only got to spend 20 minutes with a character at a time, you can just drop character every now and again if it's going to be funny for the scene. But when you've got to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours within their company, it should feel more consistent than that. On top of that, a lot of the gags actually stay past their welcome. And like I said, it's not like you can't do a lowbrow comedy movie. Some great comedies like Zoolander or Step Brothers are really stupid, but they're still well written because they're consistent stories with real characters in them. And that comparison between TV comedy and film comedy kept on coming back to me throughout the film, and not in a good way. Paul Feig's done a lot of good work on TV. He did stuff like The American Office. But at the end of the day, there has to be something different to justify going into a cinema to see a movie. And a lot of the time, he's afraid to use a lot of the scope of a cinema screen. Whenever there's a big action set piece, we very rarely get the wide that we want. Whenever there's a really funny comedic reaction, we very rarely get a push in on a face so we can see it. As a result, a lot of the movie is just shot kind of like this, I guess. It's kind of like a Head and Shoulders kind of level of thing. Just take a look at the trailer and you can see that. As I pointed out in my Captain America Civil War review, there's a lot of reasons why this kind of safe directing style is quite popular at the moment. But one of them that I think is really prominent is the idea of a smartphone watching audience. Huge wides or extreme close-ups usually don't look quite right on a smartphone, and so they often use this kind of safe middle. There's very little variety of the shots in this, and quite often there will be scenes, whole scenes, where characters are just sitting down, being shot in medium wides. That's not inherently bad in itself, like a lot of the things with this movie. If you watch the original Ghostbusters, a lot of it's shot quite safely. But in a movie as bland as this one, it becomes very noticeable very quickly. I suppose one argument about Ghostbusters is that if it makes you laugh, then it's a successful comedy. But the problem with an analysis like that is that I don't just want this to be a comedy, I want it to be a comedy film. For me, a film should tell a full story, hopefully roughly self-contained, and this film kind of fails to do that. Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy are 2 of the most talented comedic actors that we currently have, and yet they get nothing really to do in this movie, which is especially bad considering they're supposed to be the 2 leads. I mean, think about it, look at their background. The idea was they used to be friends, they wrote a book about ghosts together, and then Wiig's character decided she didn't believe in ghosts, she just believed in theoretical physics, and she broke off their friendship, and that's been the case for like years by the time the film kicks off. About 20 minutes in, Wiig sees a proper ghost for the first time, and she's instantly a believer, fair enough. But what we never get is any sense of conflict about that. There's still those like 10 years when they didn't talk to each other. There's still all that time where Melissa McCarthy was struggling away in a basement, and Wiig is just sitting in a wood-panelled office. And every now and again, the film will almost attempt to do something about it, but actually they never do. They never really kick in and actually have a plot. Yeah, there's a bad guy. Yeah, he's got an evil plan about ghosts. But what about the people who are the leads of the film, whose interaction should be the main meat of the movie? We get nothing about them. And so most of the jokes come from Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon's characters, Patty and Holtzman. Patty's got some great lines, and she's nowhere near as stereotypical as she seemed in the trailers. And Holtzman gets all of the good laughs. But if your most interesting characters aren't your leads, then your movie's got kind of a big problem. Compare it to the original Ghostbusters. I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to talk about the original Ghostbusters because I think it's unfair. Unlike a lot of people, I'm not very focused on remakes and sequels being a problem. I mean, I like Shakespeare, and every time I see a Shakespeare play, that's a remake, right? That seems okay. That seems fine for me to see that people could try something different every 20, 30 years. And the one saving grace of this movie is that it is different enough it doesn't sully the legacy of the previous film. It's such a good film, and it's so unique. There's something about it, it just happened to be everyone in the right place at the right time in their careers, and in the zeitgeist of the 80s. It's not the kind of thing which can be mimicked. And actually, to this film's credit, they don't really do it. It sort of does that soft reboot thing that you see a lot around. It's more like The Force Awakens, where they just happen to have roughly the same plot structure of the film. I mean, we open off with a female ghost being discovered by a worker in a cultural institution. Then we get the protagonists at an educational establishment, which they then get kicked out of. Then they go in and catch their first ghost, who happens to be electrified. They meet Slimer. There turns out to be a giant kind of creature involved. But despite those very broad strokes, it does ultimately manage to depart enough from the original that it doesn't make me feel sick watching it. So there you have it. A confused, slightly dull, some laughs here, so average it's okay comedy that ultimately wastes the potential of most of the people in it, and in fact the franchise. And it begs the question, doesn't it? Why do people keep doing this? Why do they keep remaking these beloved things? Why do they keep removing stories from their natural context and trying to reconstruct them while still paying enough lip service to fuck everyone who enjoyed the original off? And the simple answer is money, isn't it? But that's okay. That's why they call it the film industry. It's about making money. And who can blame them? In a world full of political and economic turmoil, who can blame those poor executives for wanting just a little bit of stability in their lives? Who can blame the baby boomers who are going back and trying to relive some of their nostalgia? Who can blame them for that pleasurable ability to complain about how it's just not as good as the last one? Who can blame them? Who can we blame for Ghostbusters 2016? I don't know, but what I can tell you is that I paid full price for a ticket to go and see this. So maybe I'm the most to blame of anyone. I mean, like collectively the viewer. Think about it. That's it from me. Hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to click subscribe to get the next one when it comes out, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye now.